Hi, I'm Atalanta, and this is Everyday Witchcraft. Here on Everyday Witchcraft, we explore everything from witchcraft to the occult to the paranormal and the spiritual. Every week, we have special guests that have expertise in the subject matter at hand. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. Tonight's returning guests are Ruth Souther and Beverly Oberline. Our subject this evening is tarot. Both are very practiced in this area, and I'm extremely excited to have them on tonight. Ruth is an author of many books, including Vegas Path, The Elemental Priestess, and The Heart of Tarot. She is also an intuitive reader and teacher. Beverly is a holy Fire Karuna Reiki Master, an intuitive tarot reader, and an energy healer. We're here on another episode of Everyday Witchcraft, and we have returning guests, Ruth Souther and Beverly Oberline. How you doing today?
Awesome. Yeah, good.
Fantastic. I would like you to introduce yourself for those who are just tuning in. Beverly, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Bev Oberline, and I am a Holy Fire Karuna Reiki Master, as well as an intuitive tarot reader. And I have been taught by my good friend and mentor, Ruth Souther, for several years. When did we start? 2007, something like that, I think.
Yeah.
And I really have been pretty much reading since, I would say, about 2008 or 2009, and I really enjoy it. It's kind of funny that I found out I met so many different people, all types of people who wanted a reading. And I mean, when I worked here I live in Southwest Florida, and when I worked here at Flea Masters in Fort Myers, good grief, I met people from England. I had people from Germany, people from Mexico, Brazil, I think, a couple from Canada. We have you see a lot of Ontario license plates down here in the wintertime in season. And it's always interesting, and it's always fun, and sometimes, of course, it isn't. Sometimes the cards aren't very kind, but it's a really fulfilling thing to be able to do, I think, and I really enjoy it. So,
Hi, I'm Ruth Souther, and I have been doing tarot since like 1989, I think. My favorite deck is the Thoth deck, Crowley deck, and I like it because it's queen high, for one thing, and because it is so multi-layered with symbols and symbology. I mean, I could read and 10, 20 people and find something different in each card, depending on their energy and what it is we're looking at with their story. And speaking of stories, that's the way I like to read. I always tell people, let's lay the cards out, and then I'm going to tell you a story about yourself. And if they don't cry, I'm like, oh, let's go back so I can make you cry. I always figure tears are a good sign, right? But no, truly, as Bev said, I've been teaching it for many years, and I believe in positive spins. So even if they get a really hard card, or a difficult card, I should say, every card that has a shadow, for every shadow card, there's a light side. And I always spin it. I never leave anyone feeling bad or scared or worried. I think that's not a good thing to do. I don't like to hear people describe how they got a reading and then they were scared or upset. I've had people actually call me and go, I need a reading right away because I got this reading somewhere and they scared me. And to me, that is just wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Exactly.
The cards are a psychological tool that points out all the emotional and physical and spiritual truths about ourselves, but they are in no way predicting a death or predicting a breakup, there could be those signs already there when the people draw the cards, but I'm not going to tell them that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and there's always a way to present it where it's not scary, even if it is something that's kind of rough coming up. There's always, like you said, there's a balance to it, even though, I mean, we all go through hard times. There's a reason and there's a lesson in there. And if more readers would follow through like you do, they could give that lesson, which is the whole point in the first place.
It is. It's to inform the person who's getting the reading. I have people say, oh, should I ask a question? It's like, you can ask questions, but whatever is in your energy field is what's going to get answered. And sometimes it relates, sometimes it doesn't. But yes, exactly. And I one card, and I love to hear Bev's opinion on this, that when it turns up, it is the sorrow card, which is in the top deck. And I'm always very careful because it could mean death. It could mean some kind of grief. It could mean job loss. It could mean a relationship gone. And I always kind of poke around a little bit before I say anything specific. And usually they'll come back and, tell me what it is. But I don't, unless I'm getting a really strong vibe, I don't like to go, so you've had a death in your family, because that's not always true, but a lot of times it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I struggle with that card in terms of basically the same thing that Ruth said. It's like I don't want to just come right out and say, "Oh, well, this is bad," because it. So I do the same. I poke around and so it's not a terribly.
Yeah. And it all comes like full circle. Everything's kind of related to each other. And even though they might have like a negative part of their reading, it always, like I said, comes full circle. And then because of that is going to come out something positive, and what I do when I do readings, and I don't really do tarot much anymore. I do the bones, but I do tarot every once in a while. What I do with any of my readings is that's exactly what I say is I tell a story. This is your story. It starts out right here, and then it starts going into a little bit of a flow. And then I recap at the end. I always start with a positive, always end with a positive. And if there's a solution out there, obviously the ancestors give the solution. If there's not, there's ways you can kind of deal with it and what can you learn from it. And I think that's what's important, because that's why people come to you in the first place,
Absolutely.
most of the time.
Yeah. Well, and I do the same thing. That's what Ruth taught us. When she, and I would like to just tell a little funny story on Ruth. Taryn and I and Ruth had danced together for a long, long time. And so Taryn kept saying, I really want to learn the tarot. And I said, well, I do too. And Ruth always said she'd teach us, but we never could find the right time, So finally, we kind of Taryn and I put our heads together and we decided, all right, we're going to try a two-pronged approach. We're going to be like two little kids in the backseat. Are we there yet, Daddy? And when? And so finally she said, all right, fine. She said, I'll show you guys how to do this. But she said, I'm only going to do like one, maybe two classes, and that's all. And she's been teaching ever since. So.
And that group of people, this is also funny. It went on for like 3 years, and they would bring wine and order pizza because I've never had a group like that since. We really, really got into the cards at that point. So, but that's I want to go back to the positive, and then that little spin in the middle. The cards are about the person, right? So if it is, say, ruin, Ten of Swords, ruin, it is about, or nine, whatever it is now. You think I'd know after doing these cards for so many years, but ruin, okay, and it's bloody swords in the top deck. It's self-ruin, so it's easy enough for me to say, so you're beating yourself up an awful lot. What's happening in your life? Or it looks to me like you're carrying a lot of guilty feelings or something, and it opens the door for them to talk about it. But when it's self-ruin, anything, then to me it's easier to say it to them, because they're understanding that it's not about someone else doing it to you, it's you doing it to yourself.
Yeah, especially with the swords, because it can be that internal voice, And I don't know about you, but I will often get a very clear distinction as to whether it's an internal voice or it's an external one. Do you get that, Ruth?
I get that sometimes. Yeah, I do. But I always start with them.
Well,
That
that's
point.
not
This is your story, so here we're going to start here. Now, why are you thinking these things about yourself? Because you're hearing other people say them about yourself, and it just, as you were saying, it rolls into a bigger piece when you start with certain questions or certain things. But I will say that I may have said this before, but what cracks me up is people come in who are new and they'll go, I am not going to say anything. I'm not going to smile. I'm not going to give you any clue as to whether you're right or wrong. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm always right.
I'm still going to read for you.
I'm not going to read for you, and I'm always right. You'll learn that soon enough. So pretty soon they're laughing or crying, whatever.
Yeah.
Know.
Yeah.
But I
I had a
joke about
girl.
the crying. But if you can really touch someone, if I can touch someone from that deep emotional place where they have a little bit of a release, and that's what tears come in, that's what I think they need, is they want someone to point that out for them so they can release a little bit of that stress or emotion, whatever it is.
And so they have validation. I had a girl once that it was for bone reading. I had a girl, it was by video, and I had never read for her before. And I asked her my usual questions because I'm like, okay, what do you want to know about? Is there anything in particular? I always start with a general, but if you want a question, a focus, that's fine. No, just a general. I said, okay. All right. So I cover different subjects, and then I started going down. I said, do you have a partner? She goes, I don't know. You tell me. And I was like, okay. I said, do you have any children? And she said, I don't know. You tell me. And I'm like, okay. So I'm seeing how this is going. And it was a 20-minute reading. An hour and a half later, she was still getting the reading. And then, of course, now she's a client.
Right. You tell me, okay, let me tell you something about yourself, your sister. But yes, right. It's true. And I get this question a lot. How do these cards work? It's devil's work. Oh my God. Or it's evil or whatever. And so my answer is, first of all, no, none of that. But how do they work? They are a psychological tool. Every symbol on those cards is meant to mean something to humans, humanity. It speaks into humanity. Out of all the deck I use has got 80 cards in it. You turn any one of them over and it will mean something to you. It may not be in the moment that in a spread it wouldn't come up, but it will mean something because it's about being alive. And they're like, oh, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I don't know how you explain bones though. How do you explain bones? Because
It's literally communication with me. The crazy part about bones is that if you just had the meanings that you have introduced and you just went strictly off the meanings and you didn't use any intuition, any feelings, anything like that, you were just like, okay, ancestors, just use the bones. I'm not going into it. I'm not going to try to, nothing. They're still scary accurate. It's so weird. And I love it. And when people are first learning, that's what they do. They just kind of have, because they're still trying to connect with the ancestors. So it's like they just kind of go by the meanings, unless they've had previous experience with divination. But yeah, it's funny because I mean, tarot and bones are actually pretty similar, especially in the way that you read. For example, like who do you personally communicate with? With bones, it's ancestors. Boom, that's it. You might hear from a spirit guide, but it's ancestors. When you work with tarot, because different people do different things. Do you work with spirit guides, all the above, the collective consciousness?
For me, it's all of the above, and it depends on who I'm reading, because sometimes their ancestors or someone who's connected to them, I've had them come in before and give me a specific message, and in one case in particular, I'm thinking of when I was reading over at Flea Masters, a man came in with his wife, and his wife wanted to get a reading, and she got a reading, and he said, I'm going down to the bar. So he went down to the bar and had a beer, and he came back, and she said, she's really good. You should get a reading. And he's like, I don't believe any of this stuff, but she talked him into it. So he sat down at the table, and his mother very clearly to me came in and said, and it was in relation to a card that he had pulled, And he just was, I mean, he just sat there, and his mouth open and dropped, his jaw dropped to the floor, and he turned around to his wife and said, "Did you tell her that?" And she's, I was like, "Well, good," and those are the ones that are really, to me, not because of their surprise, but it's really gratifying to know that, you really are connected, and you really did say this, and it was a good message, and he was very happy, and I felt privileged then to deliver that, and that's one of the, the best things about it is to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. The first time, okay, so I started with tarot in 90, the end of, no, the beginning of 96. My sister was killed in 95, at the end of 95. Moved up to Pennsylvania. My husband and I were opening a soccer store. We go there to look at a building, and the guy that was showing the building just stops in the middle and says, "I have to read your cards." And I'm like, okay. So he takes me to a room, does not know me, takes me to a room. We're sitting down. And of course, I'm all excited and interested. I think that was like the first time maybe I ever actually had my cards read. And he's describing my sister. He's describing the red truck that hit her, the initials of the guy that was driving the truck. Um, so many different things. This guy had no idea who I was at all whatsoever. I had just moved up there. And I mean, he was in detail. And I was I was tearing up, and I said, "How do you know this?" And he said, "Well, she's sitting right next to you right now." And I was like, and it was crazy because that year she actually came to me many times in dreams and stuff. And I think she just wanted me to know, me to
Mhm.
know that she was okay. And it was beautiful. So the same guy, his name's Lauren, the same guy who did that reading gave me the deck that he was reading from, and then taught we ended up renting the building, taught me how to read, and later on taught me bones.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this whole thing. And the more that you delve into it, I keep telling people it's just all part of the circle. It's all part of the same thing. We're connected. You're connected. You may not know it, but you're as connected as I am. You just don't know how to utilize it. I've been taught, and the more that I do this, the more any kind of this work, of this type of work, whether it's Reiki, whether it's, I use my little pendulum board, which is just a round Ouija, basically, that we shop, and I use that all the time. I used it the other day for a reading with a friend of ours, because he was asking very, very, very direct questions, and the cards were being a little bit opaque, and I said, "Well, let's do this." So I used it, and it backed up everything that had come up,
Wow.
and he's like, "Well, how does that happen?" I said, "It's the same energy. It's the same energy. It's energy. It's
It's
all."
all of it. All of it is energy. Yeah, and it's not the cards aren't magic, right? The cards aren't magic. It's the energy that is given off. And that's the hard thing to explain to people that are not familiar with different types of divination. And do you find, okay, so both of you are intuitive readers. First of all, what's the difference between the different types of readers?
So, okay, so I don't do what either one of you do like that.
Mhm.
I get feelings, I get ideas, messages, but I it's my higher self, and I connect to the person I'm reading with. And so I don't see spirits. If I'm hearing from someone, it just filters through me. So I do get great hits, and I do tell people things that I don't know how I know, but I would never say that it came from a grandmother or anybody else, because it doesn't. It just comes through however it comes through. So, and I also think that part of what you're describing is a psychic, like your first reading. Psychics don't really use the cards. They
Right.
use them as a medium focal point. And so they throw these cards down, and I get so aggravated that I went to this one event, and a tarot reader, right? And no, she had like 4 or 5 decks, and she just started throwing the cards down, throwing them down, throwing them down. She wasn't reading them. she was just reading energy, and she was wrong. Everything she said was absolutely wrong. And I'm like, but wait a minute. No, she wasn't looking at the cards. So I think when you're crossing psychic with tarot, they are basically two different things. And an intuitive reader reads the energy, connects with the person they're reading for, and it's like a symbiotic relationship. And that's what I do. And the messages come from somewhere, but I would never be able to say where. Then there are psychics who really don't use the cards. They just use them as a focus point, or maybe they point something out on them. There are people who read by the book. Drives me nuts. If they don't know their cards well enough to look at the symbols and the numbers and the understanding of what that card is and read it from that point of view, but they got to pull their book out and look at it. And I know people who've been doing that for 30 years, and they should know more by now. But you can just look at the card. You can have no gift, no intuitive, no connection, no nothing, and look at that card and look at those symbols and read that card.
And what's speaking to you at the time. I used to have on my business cards because I did this because it was so, like, that's what people connect readers is. It said psychic advisor, and then I was like, I got the ick factor, not because psychics are icky, because I'm not psychic. And I was like, that's very misleading. So I changed it obviously to spiritual advisor. Because to me, because that describes, who I am more. And it is a lot on intuition and feelings and reading energy and things like that. And like I said, it's not that psychics are ick, it's that I'm not psychic. So, but that's what everybody, well, not everybody, that's what a lot of people associate it with.
Yeah.
Oh, they do. Absolutely, they do.
I don't use the term psychic either. I still use intuitive, because those, like that example that I gave you, that in particular, I knew that one was so clear. It was just so clear. And it was actually him who said, that sounds like my mother. I knew that there was someone giving me this message, but he said it was him. It's her. He said sounds like his mother. I was like, okay, fine, it's your mother. But I also don't use psychic because I know a lot of people, like Ruthie said, have, gone to people, and this is not just psychics, but who have misrepresented themselves and told them, like she said, some horrible thing. We had one poor girl come in one time, and she said she was in tears because her chakras were broken. Someone told her that she's going to die. Her chakras were broken. And I'm like, who would do that? That's just cruel. That's just, it's not only is it ignorant, but it's just cruel. It's just mean. Well, the upshot of it was, it'll cost you $1,500 to get that fixed,
Right.
And so I just try to stay, I have some psychic ability, but I would not call myself a psychic at all. I read, like Ruth says, and that's how she taught me, is to read, to connect with the person and read the energy,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And as far as the book thing is concerned, if you're reading by the book, this person's going to get the same message as this person because you're reading by the book. And that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not saying it's bad to read by the book. It's better than not doing it at all. But learn, like you said, kind of learn, what it means to you and what's speaking to you at that time. I think people are just scared.
Well, and what it is it might be fear, and it might be self-confidence. It's probably self-confidence, right? Or they're afraid they'll say the wrong thing. But I have dozens and dozens of decks. I love my decks, but I use the main one or two all the time. And that's what I'd recommend anybody new listening to this. Pick your favorite deck and get to know it very, very well, so that when you are looking at this deck with someone and something jumps out at you, and you hear in your mind or whatever, oh, this little symbol right here is about you and blah blah blah, instead of just, like you say, by rote reading through it. I also am very much into numerology, and I use the numbers a lot. If I'm not getting any really like big sense of anything happening in these cards, I'll start talking about the numerology, and then that opens the door to some more pieces of it. But if you're new, get to know your deck really well. And Bev and I both have experienced this when we're doing holistic fairs or some sort of event, and you're reading like 20, 30 people a day that are coming through. They start drawing the same card. the energy of the group begins to take over, and they draw the same card. Every person will draw similar cards, but every message is different. Every message is unique. And that's another piece of knowing the card and connecting with that person, is that this message for Joe was one thing, this message for Judy was something else. And I think that's the fun in it myself.
Well, and that's what I'll tell people too. Up to a certain very narrow point, the Six of Swords is the Six of Swords is the six, and it's always going to be the Six of Swords. But it depends on where it comes up in your reading. It depends on how all the other cards are, acting with it or reacting to it, and your energy and all those. It's is as individual as each person is, but we used to compare when we go to the holistic fairs, how many empresses we got and how many this we got, that, and I had 9, whatever, or everybody was drawing royalty, or there wasn't any royalty at all, and it's really funny the way the group energy gets going.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that happened. But now that I think about it, it's kind of like that with the bones. Yeah, it really is. That's kind of neat. But it is a different message, like with the bones. It is a different message, with each person, because it's all what surrounds it and all that good stuff. But
all right. So people would come into these holistic fairs, and so most readers are $20 each. They would just come in with a pocket full of 20s and go up and down the line, 20, 20, 20, to see if what I said or what Bev said or somebody else said. And almost always the messages were the exact same. Again, is that group energy, not everybody was taught by me. Some of them were, some of them weren't, but it's, oh yeah, that's what they said. And they said, and they said, which is also fascinating.
Yeah.
That group energy.
Yeah, that's really neat. You were talking about, like, somebody goes and they get a bad message, but hey, you can clean those chakras for $1,000. That bothers me so bad when people do that. And how often, like, do you come across that? Do you get it's kind of like somebody getting a bad tattoo and then you have to go get it fixed, I feel so bad for people that get those messages. And how do you not spin it, but how do you address it when they come to you with
that particular case? I was working in a metaphysical shop, and we just told her, you come right back here and sit down. And first of all, nobody's going to die. We got her calm down, got a cup of tea. All right. Where did this happen? What happened? How, and we just told her, and I don't remember, somebody gave her a reading. I don't even remember if it was me or one of the other girls, but somebody did. And it was like, you're fine. Everything's fine, and we just, it was just kind of, taking care of her at that moment, and getting her to understand that this is just, without saying it that way, that this is just really BS, and that's not going to happen. That's not how it works. And finally she actually left and sent back a friend of hers. And then that girl came in and she said, I want to have a reading. She said, I was going to go to that other lady, but I'm not going to go now, and so, it's just, I guess when I don't know, I was lucky, I guess, when I first got a reading, I knew people, who had someone reliable. And so I went he came down from Peoria and somebody had him at his house. And so I went, and had my first reading, and I was just blown away. And from there on, I always wanted to learn, how to do it. But I guess if you're just picking numbers out of the phone book, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And, and sometimes, not just, well, I can make you a mojo bag to fix that problem, but sometimes it's like they give you that bad news just on purpose, so you will come back soon to see if it's changed.
Yeah, it is like that. A lot of them sell a package. So 2 things. I have no problem calling bullshit, and I will do it. And I will want to know the name of the person that gave him the reading, whether it's psychic or tarot or whatever it is. I want to know who it is, because I will never recommend somebody. And anybody who wants to go to a psychic, they ask me for my opinion. If I haven't been to them and haven't heard them, I won't refer. So, but how do I fix it? I do this. I want to give you a complimentary reading. And first of all, I want you to tell me exactly what you drew from that person, if you took a picture of it, and then we go back over it. And if they don't remember, we do a new draw, and I I turn the story around. And you asked how often does it happen? Not that often. Maybe 2 times last year I had it happen. It's not a really big occurrence. The ones who get really caught up in a story of someone who tells them something crazy like that, they're very naive or they're very needy. And I'm sorry for anybody out there listening if that upsets you, but it's the truth. Look at yourself. Why do you need somebody else to validate you? If you don't know what your chakras are, whether they're broken, and they can't tell you anything other than pay me this money, then you need to reevaluate where you're going and what you're hearing. Do some research.
It's just scary, because, most people, I mean, we're in the magical community, so we kind of have it very good. But a lot of people, like, for example, going to New Orleans, you may find somebody there that's going to read tarot. It's just the crapshoot, like y'all were saying. And you sit down, say you've never had a reading before, you sit down, you don't know what to expect, and then you might get somebody who's legitimate. You might get somebody who's trying to sell something in their shop. And they honestly don't know, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show, because I wanted to, matter of fact, maybe you can make suggestions. How do you tell if somebody's legit? Because for those people out there that just don't know.
Well, one of the things Ruth taught me, and I think she does it still too, is she'll say your first card is free, and I will do that if somebody's, I don't know, I really want to do this, I'm not sure, and I'll just tell them, why don't you just pick a card out of the deck and let me read it? And there's no obligation. You don't have to pay me. If you don't like it, walk away. It's no big deal. And they'll be like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And then I'll read that card, and they're like, oh, yeah. And I would, for myself, if I were going to someplace and I wasn't sure, I'd say, would you read a complimentary card for me? And if they weren't willing to, then I'm not willing to put down my money.
Right. That's a really good idea. I've never even thought about that. That's a really good idea. Do you find yourselves gifting a lot of I go through, like, whenever I went through the big change recently in my life, there were some people that really went above and beyond. And I love gifting readings. And I was like, look, here's my card. I want to gift you a reading if you're interested. I get it if you're not, but this is what I do. And I love to do that. And you meet people sometimes that you just know they need that reading. Like Lauren did with me, years ago with my sister. Yeah, you just kind of meet. Do you find yourself doing that often?
I do. I give free readings a lot. And I believe in the law of abundance, is that the more you give, the more you get back, that there's enough for everybody. And so I do often do that, especially people I feel really need it. But I want to go back to that. How do you know? Okay. One thing that you can look for is, obviously, if they try to sell you more than what you want. If the reading is $25, or if it's real cheap, if it's $10, but then they want you, oh, I'll give you 3, but if you want more, then it's more money, and it's more money. It's always about money. And so if they're trying to hook you, if they're telling you things that do not make sense to you, I always say, take these cards, even me, I am great at what I do, with salt. Take it with a grain of salt, because I am reading what I know. I'm reading energy, I'm reading the card, but I might not be right. And if they are absolutely insistent that what they're saying to you is the right thing, and you're feeling really weird about it, then no, it's not the right thing. And if you ask questions and they want to pull you back to whatever line of thinking that they're doing, another big red flag. The other thing, and this might sound funny, but if they don't even crack a smile, hell no. If they can't laugh and joke and go, yeah, I know this is going to seem really funny, but here's what I want to say about this one, then I'm out of here. Especially, any kind of reader or psychic or anybody like that. It's like, if you can't show me your human side,
yeah,
I don't think you're legit. You're just out here trying to make butt.
overbearing and pushy, and yeah,
Right.
I've had experiences
Right.
with
Yes.
readers.
And there's another thing I
Okay,
wanted to.
well, if someone comes to you and says, can you read, for example, if I come to you, Ruth, and I say, what is Beverly up to? If I do this, how will she respond? What is Beverly up to? Big no-no, right?
Big no. If somebody wants to know about somebody else, the answer is absolutely not. I'm going to talk about you and maybe your relationships and how you relate to other people. And I've also had people come in and say, I really want to ask a question about my husband or about my friend. Can you read a card for them? No, I can't. But I can read a card for you in relationship to them.
Hmm.
But it's just like, I know we aren't really talking about spell work right now. That's another one we should do.
That's
But
another show.
and
Yes.
spell work, it has to be about you. It can't be about the other person.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's invasive.
Mhm.
It is.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, not only that, right, but they're, as we said, they're not sitting across from me, and I've told people that recently, in fact, that I really can't, I really can't do that because she's not here, and I
Like
don't know.
putting a camera up in a private room, and watching somebody. It's just,
Yeah.
could you do it? You could, but you're not gonna. I'm not going to.
Now you turn a card over and you go, so why are you so nosy?
That's funny. Oh my goodness. I'm
Yeah.
gonna use that.
This card says you are too
You
nosy.
are nosy. Let's look
What
at
about
my
Oracle? What
Oracle
about
decks. For those who are just kind of starting out on this, can you do a little explanation? I mean, people know the obvious, that the Oracle looks like this and the Tarot looks like this, but what do you think about, like, what's the big difference to you between Oracle and Tarot? And do you have like, is Tarot your preference, or do you use Oracle as well?
Well, I use Oracle too, and the biggest difference is Tarot has a very specific alignment. Major, minor arcana, royalty, or court cards, whatever you want to call it. They are very specific, 78 cards or more, depending on the deck. An Oracle deck can be anywhere, anything from 25 to 110 if they want. Oracles are more self-explanatory. If you know how to read tarot, and if you really just looked at the picture, you would get it. But an Oracle card generally has explanation right on it. Like, this is what it is. You can read the book, but it's right there. I use Oracle in a lot of group settings because I don't want to have to explain everybody's card. So here, draw this. Oh, I got the universe, or I got the dream, dream into the future. It's self-explanatory, and it really is nice to do that. In fact, I will buy Oracle decks for certain events and then give them away. I give the cards away. You draw a card and you keep it.
Oh, I like
And
that.
yeah, and they're not really expensive, and they've paid enough for the event that a free card is thrilling. But that's the biggest difference to me. So I love both.
Yeah.
Tarot is wonderful, but I don't like to do Oracle readings because
Mhm.
I think they're too vague.
Right.
I could spin it, but I like the Tarot because it really narrows the focus a lot more.
And I found when I first used an Oracle deck, I kept thinking in Tarot terms, and it wasn't working. I'm like, where are the numbers? Where's the numerology? Where's the astrological sign? What's going on here? And then flip it over, and there it is. Oh, okay. But they're obviously, some are better than others, just like any other deck, and I have my favorites, and others I'm like, yeah.
How many decks do you think y'all have?
75, 80.
That's fabulous.
I give them away sometimes, and then I'll buy another one. I gave a deck to a little kid one time. He came in for a counseling session with his mom. I'm a spiritual counselor, but we talked about hypnosis. We didn't do that, but we did spiritual counseling. And I got these cards out, and he was so entranced with them. I just gave it to him, and it's been a real healing tool for him. And I've done that with 2 or 3 other kids. So I will buy specific decks for kids, just in
Oh,
case.
that's fantastic. I gave I like to, if I meet somebody that, like, at an event, I just get that feeling. I'll give them a starter kit, or a few pieces or whatnot. And I met a little girl in October, and she was autistic, so sweet, and she was just obsessed with bone throwing. And she would just she didn't ask for anything, but she sat there just in awe and looking through the book, looking through the book, looking through the book. So I gave her, a small kit and a book. And of course, she was just over the top. And her mother contacted me a few weeks later and said that she's on it every single night. And she emailed me a real sweet, little email. And every once in a while I hear from her. But she said it's just really helping her, with like with our therapy and stuff. And I mean, I just think that's beautiful. I love it whenever children, my
Right?
grandson is and he's very in tune with tarot. I mean, very in tune with it. I love
And
that.
if he doesn't have, if he's younger, there are some really awesome decks for kids out there. But yes, I love to do that too, especially kids. I have a interesting little story. I think I used to do the pagan picnic, and I think Bev, you did that too with our group that we had. And I would read cards, and I would do $1 a card because there was 400 readers, and I was mostly doing it to draw them to our tent. This little boy runs up to me, and he wants me to read a card. He pulls out this crumpled dollar bill and he drops it. And I'm like, well, here's a deck that's for kids, and here's my top deck. And he wanted the top deck, the grown-up deck. And so I read the card for him. He was going to sit down, and I only had a camp chair, and he's like really low. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have a better chair. And he goes, do you want a chair? I mean, this kid couldn't have been more than 7 years old. I'm like, oh, well, sure. He said, I'll be right back. He runs away, comes back with a chair. I do the reading. I never see him again. The pagan picnic is like a mile long, and people walk back and forth, back and forth. He never showed up again. At the end, we packed everything up. Nobody claimed that chair. I think he was a fairy child that came across
Oh,
and brought a chair from God knows where. But yeah, that chair was still laying there when we all drove away. I don't know where he got.
oh my goodness. That's so
Isn't that
sweet.
amazing? I mean,
Yeah.
I just the fairy world, yet another thing. But I think they
Yep.
come in, they can walk around and nobody suspects anything.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. One thing I think people out there might really be interested in is what deck should you start on if you're doing tarot?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I started on the top, and basically so did Bev, and that's what I teach, and even people who like other decks, like the Rider-Waite-Smith, the behind you, they'll drop that for the top after they get to know it. But people are afraid of it because it's so complicated, and it really isn't. If you start with Rider-Waite-Smith, it's very simplistic. People look like people, animals look like animals, et cetera, et cetera. And if that's a good starter deck for you, go ahead. It's the most popular deck in the whole world, right? But I recommend that you find one that really speaks to you. And there are hundreds out there with every possible twist and turn you could ever think of. Find one that you really like that the images call you, and then really study it. The other thing is that 99 and 9/10 of the decks out there are copies of Rider-Waite-Smith. They're arranged exactly the same way, a different theme, maybe even different words, but it's the same arrangement as the Rider-Waite-Smith. The Toth is unique, and I love it. It's humanoid looking rather than human, which gives you a lot of latitude. But that's my 2 cents worth on starter decks.
I like that. What about you, Beth?
I'm pretty much the same place. I learned, with Ruth being my teacher, I learned on the top. So I didn't have really, I never even looked at the Rider-Waite-Smith because we just jumped right in on this. And it is always my go-to. It's always what I come back to. I have other decks that I like and that I use, and some I bought for specific purposes. I bought a goddess deck because I wanted to explore just different goddesses that were out there, and this deck is nothing but goddesses. And I was like, cool. So and I learned a lot from it. But it's always come back to that Toth deck, no matter what, and for reasons. And I mean, I think obviously since I learned from her with all the things that Ruth says, the layers in the thing, because as you're reading, sometimes I'll say, well, this card's kind of leaning in this direction, and it might be this or this or this, and they're like, no, that's not really, not really getting that. I'm like, well, okay, if you look at the numbers here, this is the numerology here is, this is a 4, and so that's about your boundaries and this kind of thing, and that kind of, and then the bulb goes on, and so that's the other thing about it. With all those layers, there's several different routes into the result, and so if the first one isn't hitting on all cylinders, sometimes you'll get over here and then that one will, and so you can and then a lot of times too, then they'll be like, oh, well, you know what, that does make sense what you said earlier. Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, but it
I
starts.
like that you kind of mix in like the numerology in with the tarot. And I like to mix, like right now I'm doing, and it's in my next book, doing playing cards with bones. Now, in saying that, I also do some tarot with bones. I actually have a couple, and I wish I had them with me, but I don't because I'm on the road right now. But I have a couple bone tarot decks, and I love them.
Ooh.
Oh, they're so much fun. I've got
Oh,
three, I think now. They're hard to find, but I think it's three or four.
hey,
But yeah,
me,
so
I'm already searching for it here in a
yeah,
minute.
Yeah, we
yep.
That's
I
really
the
cool.
book,
Are you like they always come with a book. So they might have a few words on there that give you a clue or give you something to go with.
Mhm.
Every event I go to, the shamanic stuff I do and all that, people want the book to read it. I look
Yeah,
at what it says and then I read it myself and I don't want to look at the book. But then because they're so hung up on what that book says. Even my books, don't get hung up on what I said. What
yeah,
do you
right,
think it was? What do you think it means?
right.
right. Yeah, because that's where the message is coming from, absolutely. And I like that. I like the way you're explaining that, because I do think that people are too hung up on what the meaning is in the book. In my bones, I have suggested meanings. These are the traditional ones, but if you don't feel that, change it. The only one I ask not to change is the skull, because that's ancestors. Um, but those cards are going to mean something to you, and and with each time you're before somebody, you're going to see maybe this in the picture, and then you're going to see maybe that in the picture, or these two things, or those two things. And yeah, it's 100%, how you interpret it and what you're feeling, that energy you're getting at that time. Some people just use the major arcana. And I've always used both. But what's the advantage? What's the disadvantage? I mean, I guess what I'm asking, I don't understand how you can use just the major arcana, because to me the minor is the supporting cards, like the details.
It is. It's the minor arcana are the daily lessons, whether there are things that get in your way or there are things that support you. And how can you only live by these giant archetypical energies if you're trying to read cards? Then you're not playing with a full deck. And the other piece is the court cards. Now, some like in the Rider-Waite-Smith, it's ace through king. That's the whole what the arcana, the court cards are the tacked on just like playing cards, but it's very specific in our the way I teach tarot anyway, and also what I learned on it was the royalty is different. The royalty are the challenges that we face. So you have your archetypical energy, the big stuff you're trying to step into or understand. You have your daily lessons and experiences and support, and you have the challenges that you need to go forward. So how can you play with only part of that?
Right. Doesn't make sense. Speaking of what you teach, do you want to talk a little bit about your book and how people can get it, and both of you, how they can get in touch with you?
Yes. Bev, you want to go first?
Sure, I can. I teach tarot online, and if anybody's interested, and I also do readings online, and I do in-person Reiki at one of the spas here locally, and also distant Reiki. So you can reach me at, I'm going to give you my new email, Soul Sherpa 2023 at gmail.com, or via phone or text 239-940-1404.
And we'll put that information up on the screen, the show for you. And you do do you do video readings, or do you do just the phone reading?
I do them via Zoom. I wasn't sure, when we went into the whole COVID thing, I was like, boy, I don't know. I'm somebody called me from Ohio and they wanted a reading, and I'm like, oh, that's a long way away. I don't know about that. But, I found out that I can connect with them just as easily as I can if they're sitting across me.
Yep. Yep.
So
And do you do one-on-one teachings, or do you do group, or a little bit of
if
just
anybody
depending?
wants, I had a fellow come to me last year and wanted teaching, so we started, and then he said, "Hey, my friend wants to join in. Can she, come in too?" And she had a little bit of experience, and so I let her come on in because she already had a little bit of insight into it. And whatever anybody wants. I mean, if somebody wants to put a group together, we'll do that. If somebody just wants me to teach them individually, I'm happy to do that as well.
And all your information, they can email you, and your Facebook page. Did you mention that? Your
I
Facebook
did.
page?
My Facebook page is Wolf Spirit Energy on Facebook, and then my individual Beverly Arnold Oberline also page. So either way.
Thank you. And Ruth?
So my tarot book is called The Heart of Tarot. It's intentional in intuition through an intuitive way. And there are challenges, there are questions, there are all kinds of stuff in that book. There's some spreads, there's some bonus pieces I put in there this time. I started writing a book on the royalty, and I never finished it, so I consolidated it into this, so you get extra on the royalty challenge. You can get that on Amazon, and they're actually on sale right now. They are $30 book for $20 on Amazon, and you just look for Dr. Ruth A. Souther or The Heart of Tarot, and you'll find it, and you'll show a picture of it. You can reach me at Ruth Souther, SOUTHER 52 at gmail.com. My website is vegaspath.com, and I'm on Facebook as Vegas Path, and also Ruth Souther on Facebook. And I have other books out there too. I have the Priestess Path, I have the Elemental Priestess Path, I have novels out there. I'm in multiple anthologies, and a new one that Beva's in that's coming out very, very soon called Mystic Memoirs. So if anybody out there is interested in writing a story about beyond belief things that have happened to you, let me know, because we're starting to collect for volume 2.
Oh, okay. Beyond belief stories that have happened. Is it like paranormal? Is it just anything?
Well, beyond belief, what does that mean to people? What does that mean to people? Some of them were paranormal, some of them were just a trip through the backwoods of Missouri and seeing weird things, time loops and all kinds of crazy stuff. So
Well, you've
basically,
met the Queen of Weird, and I think y'all have figured that out.
okay, Queen of Weird, I would expect a story from you. And so we are, what it is, it's $100 to submit your story. And then we go over it and we recommend changes, or we accept it the way it is. And if we recommend changes, you can rewrite it and send it back to us. And we're trying to make this a positive experience for any author. And so that's what we do. That is the Edge of Perception. Okay, edgeofperception.org is the website for that. And I also am on the board of directors and chief editor for Crystal Heart Imprints, which is a independent cooperative press, because authors own their own work. Now in the anthology, that works a little different, and I'm in the Shaman Heart anthology. I'm in a lot of different anthologies these days. So self-love book that just came out, and I mean, this is the newest anthology that just came out, The Life-Changing Power of Self-Love, and so I'm in this one. And so I love to write. We teach writing. Taryn and I and this Michelle, you met Michelle, we teach writing every Monday. We have a writers group on Monday nights if anybody's interested in writing. So now I've changed the subject from tarot to writing.
It's okay. I love it. I love it. And I need to get involved with that group, because last year, last few years it's just been, I've been on the road all the time. But this year, less road travel. I am still going to go, but I'm attacking projects. So yeah, this year is going to be a lot about creativity.
Well, I'll just send you, actually, if you go to, not The Edge, we call ourselves The Edge, but it's edgeofperception.org. There's a way to sign up for that class, or not class, but for that group.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll go onto the email, and it's always 99% of the time it's my Zoom, but if it isn't, it's Terry's Zoom. So between the two of us. But if you'd like to come on just to try it out, we'd love to have you. Just Monday nights, we meet on Monday nights. And you don't have to come.
Yeah, I like that. Like it. Well, thank you so much again. And I'm going to be bothering you in a few weeks for more information. No, I learned so much whenever I have y'all on, and you're so easy to talk to, and you're just two beautiful people. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time and coming back on. Oh, and thank you for being my very first double guest, with the croning. Yes. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Atalanta. We love you too. We just are so delighted that we met you, Miss South. It was meant to be.
It was meant to be, and I can't wait to see you guys this year. Oh my goodness, we'll have so much fun.
Are you gonna teach the bones again?
I am, and I'm also offering them if they want to do the bone magic because that's my new thing.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. I really, really love having you guys on here, and much love. Blessed be.
Much love. Bye.
Bye.
We are picking back up on our series of bone magic. Today, we're going to talk about connecting with the animal that you are wishing to work with. I'm going to use the example of a shark because it's the easiest one that we can kind of connect to in vision. You can use a shark tooth. You can use a shark bone. Now, you can use that little tooth of that shark bone. You can use it in a powder. You can use it in a sachet. You can wear it. But the most important thing is to actually connect to that bone and connect to using the predator-prey method. The prey, like I said, would be the outcome. It would be, let's say, the person that you are needing protection from, or a situation that you would be needing protection from. For example, that dolphin or that small fish could be if you were on an airline flight and you were afraid of flying, that fear would be the prey. That fear would be the dolphin or the small fish. You would be the shark. Okay. And you, like I said, you could use a shark tooth or a shark bone in doing this. Hold that bone in your hand, the shark bone in your hand or the tooth in your hand, and become one with that animal. You can play tones in the background like ocean sounds, water sounds, things like that. When you're envisioning this, you want to imagine yourself surrounding what you are needing protection from. So that fear of flying, surrounding it, and attacking, actually swallowing, actually eating the thing that you need protection from. So eating that fear. Another way to connect with your animal is by the third eye connection. That is where you imagine that animal in front of you, and your third eye is connecting with their third eye. So you would actually concentrate on this energetic cord between you and the animal. And once again, I suggest, spending a couple of minutes. You don't have to spend long, but just a couple of minutes meditating and connecting to that animal. Envision in your head looking at them with your eyes closed, looking at them with your third eye and connecting with them. And you can also, once again, play like ocean sounds in the background if you are working with a shark. Thank you for joining me in this bone magic series, and I look forward to moving further with it on our journey. Blessed be. That concludes another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, and I want to give a very special thanks to Beverly Oberline and Ruth Souther for once again coming on the show. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Blessed be.